Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a really fun interview that I did with Spencer Sutton over at Evernest. Now Evernest started out as a HomeVestor franchise or two, fixing and flipping and rehabbing properties. Now they're one of the larger property manager companies in the country. I work with Bedrock and we oversee 13 property managers in 9 states. Spencer Sutton runs one of the biggest property management firms I've run into. They're saying they have about 24,000 doors right now that they oversee for clients. That is a ton of properties across a bunch of markets. Spencer and I got to have a really interesting conversation about what really goes on with the type of company I run, turnkey real estate investment, and what really goes on with having property managers manage your assets. And the number of times that we agreed on the problems that I have with investing passively in real estate were frankly shocking. I hope you enjoy this interview with me and Spencer Sutton over at Evernest. They manage 24,000 doors. This is a really fun interview to watch because it really tells the truth about passive real estate investing, single family real estate investing, why I started the biggest company I've ever started, why I think it's valuable, and why my clients have been happy. It's a spectacular interview. I hope you enjoy. Over and over, I'm like, okay, so you got this $2 million property. How much is the rent? I'm expecting, $20,000, maybe 10, right? Like maybe 10. And they're like, oh, it's at $3,500 a month. The second problem is the model has these weaknesses, which is turnkey providers can effectively sell people hot trash because it looks good on paper, and then by the time they realize it's hot trash, they're gone to the next guy, right? You buy the house, you control the house, you own the house, you finance the house however you want. We will provide this list of services for this fee, right? And we work for you. The big problem with Bedrock is it's hard to market this product. Like we've been talking for 44 minutes. And I think now you have an idea of like, sure. Oh.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast. I am your host, Spencer Sutton, and today I'm flying solo. I don't have Adam with me. And I'm really looking forward to this interview because I'm bringing on the show just an all-around professional entrepreneur. He has started so many businesses, but we're going to be talking about real estate. And I've got Jeremy Watson with me. And Jeremy, welcome to the show. You've really done some great things, and I can't wait to get into it. But thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, we've long story short, my mother passed away when I was really young. People are always like, how did you get into this? Like, how did you start?
Yeah. I mean, I literally was going to ask, that was the first question I was going to ask you. How did you get into this?
Yeah. So like, well, how did you get into this? My mother passed away when I was young, and my dad made some decisions that weren't awesome after that. And I ended up like effectively orphaned. And so I went to college, I was trying to get to college, trying to build a life. But the long and the short is, I had to really work to stay in college, right? Like really, really had to give it my all to stay in college. And so I was always going to class and starting a business. And so I started a couple businesses throughout my college career just to, pay the bills. And that just kind of became more life. All the way up until 2006, we started a real estate kind of rehabbing wholesale company, and we thought we had the dang world by the tail at that point.
Well, you did at that point.
Yeah, no, 2006, 7 was like, whoa, we will never lack for money. And then 2008 happened, and it just we didn't foreclose, we didn't BK, but we just had the shirts torn right off our backs. And so we just said, okay, maybe we need to take a step back and kind of reassess if we're going to be full-time entrepreneurs. And so I went and I just started working in financial advice for a decade. And while I was in financial advice, I saw the niche for Bedrock, which is my big company, Bedrock Investment Property. And so I saw the niche there, and I just said, someone's got to do that. Someone's got to solve these couple of issues. And so I went to my wife and said, hey, I've got this idea for a company. She had already been kind of entrepreneurial, an entrepreneur's wife for long enough. She knew what I was asking for. And yeah, that's how we started Bedrock. It was just after a decade of giving a lot of financial advice that I said, hey, I think single family residential has a place in semi-passive investment, and I don't like the way it's being done. And so that's why I started Bedrock, and I can kind of talk through that a little more. But yeah, orphaned, started a whole bunch of businesses. That's how I got into it.
Well, that's a really interesting story. What is, like, when you were in college, up before you got into real estate, what was like your favorite business that you started that maybe a little bit unique?
I love, like, if I look back at every business, I think my favorite was what they would call retail arbitrage. Like, my oldest brother, I'm the last of 10 kids. So I was orphaned, but still had a lot of siblings, however that works. But in retail arbitrage, every major retailer out there has a markdown methodology, right? They all say, okay, we put it on the shelf. If it doesn't sell after a certain amount of time, we're going to mark it down to 10% off, right? 90%. And then they'll say, we're going to mark it down to 25% off, 75%, right? And then 50% off, and then 75% off. They'll just keep going up with the discount, right? But just because something like, let's say a razor, like a Gillette razor, right? Just because it's not selling in your tiny little town in Louisiana, doesn't mean that it's not selling nationwide. And so typically a big razor like a Gillette nice razor, original price like $20. Well, they'll discount it $18 and they'll discount it $10 and then they'll discount it all the way to $250 or something like that, $5, right? The production cost of that razor is higher than $5. Right. So there's a big delta there. It's like, okay, $5 is, just because it didn't sell here doesn't mean it won't sell anywhere. And so really that business was just walking into stores, looking for everything 75 to 90% off, scanning it with a smartphone, seeing if it's for sale online, and then buying as much as we could and then selling it online. And so we did that. We sold that business twice, and we did that business 3 times. And I think even today, it's the funnest job I've ever had in my life, because you're just walking around stores looking for money. And you're like, hey, I can buy that for $2. It's selling right now for $39.99.
So you're essentially, you're really hustling in these stores and like finding the deals and then putting them online and saying, hey, I know this will sell somewhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there are things like, we invented a trifecta of evil. Like, you don't want to buy anything in that business that is non-name brand, nondescript, produced in China for pennies, right? Like old iPhone cases for like an iPhone 7 that they happen to have just a crap ton of that used to be $50 that are now marked down to 1 penny. It's like, yeah, no one wants that anymore. Like, it's nondescript, produced in China with a penny. And then the trifecta of good was like, hey, you want it name brand, you want it a specific thing someone can look up, and you want it to have a higher production price, or you want it to cost less than the production cost, right? And so like you end up with a bunch of like Brita filters for refrigerators, right? And you're buying these for $14 a piece, but people just go onto Amazon and they're like, hey, I need a Brita filter for this fridge, and they pay $44.99. So you go from 15 to 44 all day long, right? And the nice thing is, because we were shopping all these chains, the same Brita filter that was for sale here was for sale at every other Sears in the region, right? And so we just go buy them all, right?
Gotcha.
And yeah, it was great. It was like being on a permanent treasure hunt. In all candor, I would have kept doing it, but we started that business really in earnest as a married couple after our real estate business was just getting destroyed in '08, and we were just never capitalized enough. Like, I needed to be spending $1,000 a day, every day, just putting $1,000 on the shelves to make a go of it. And really, I just never had that much capital. And because of the financial life and because of the real estate, I was just like, okay, I'm never going to be able to grow this to how big I want it to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we actually had a friend, a coworker here, who went and started something similar, but he was buying truckloads of Amazon returns, and then he was selling them on eBay. And so people, when they return stuff to Amazon, apparently all Amazon does, at least this is what it was back, I guess, when he was doing this in 2016, 17, when he started, they essentially scan it and weigh it, and then move on. They don't open the box. They don't look at what you return. They don't inspect what you return. They're literally weighing it and putting it on a truck, and they're selling the truck in bulk. And then he was buying truckloads. He didn't even know what he was buying. And I know this because my nephew was working for him, and they would literally just go through and open up all these returns. And, you know, a majority of them were what they said they were. And then they would just put them on the line and sell them and make some money. So he's still doing that, but now he has physical stores where they take it and put it in bins, and people can come in there and kind of rummage through it. You've probably seen those types of stores. So, but yeah, you have to have a lot of capital because you got to pay for all that inventory up front, and then, you know, go through.
Yeah, that's the way I would do it. If I was doing like a crack and pack, buying in bulk, big containers, it's like, yeah, we're going to put all this online, but then we're going to have a point of sale where people can come and rummage, like a rummage shop. I think that's absolutely the way I would have done that.
eBay stopped being as effective after a while, and so that's when they started opening up stores.
Yeah.
Well, so Jeremy, so you got into, so this was kind of real estate 2008. It was brutal. I was in it. My partners and I were getting hammered. We were flipping houses, wholesaling houses, wasn't working. So talk about the transition to an investment advisor. Was this a W-2 job? You worked at a firm, or is it something you started? I mean, you're quite the entrepreneur. So how did that all come about? And what did that teach you, like, that you're using today? I'm just thinking of financial literacy, especially when it comes to real estate.
So we sold all the houses, right, in 2008. Had to put all our capital on the table to not like lose everything, not BK, no foreclosures, but we just had to put all of our money out just to sell them all. Right, and selling a whole ton of houses at a loss because everything's falling in value wasn't much fun. And so from there, we just went back to the old ways. Like, I put myself through college selling alarms door to door. I went to BYU. And so we just went back to the old ways. I was like, okay, I can at least pay the bills doing this. And so we were looking at kind of, okay, what do I want out of my future? What are my skills? What is my degree? Like, what can I see myself doing? And I realized, like, I'm always going to be selling something. Like, that's really my talent. It's, talking people through something, selling. And so what I wanted to find was something that I really liked, because if I like the product, I can sell it 1,000 times better. And so I just did a whole ton of research on different financial products and, different careers that could be built in that space and financial products. And I found a kind of a unique approach to financial products. And there was a guru who had written a whole bunch of best-selling books that was referred to me by a couple people. The people who didn't like the product dismissed it with no backing. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread." When the people who were dismissing that strategy dismissed it like super dismissively, and that in my world kind of puts up the flags of like, they don't have a good answer for this. Like, that's how I would dismiss something I don't have a good answer for. And so I ended up in a firm where the guy had written like 4 New York Times bestselling authors on this one financial strategy that they specialize in, kind of their baby. He's the guru on the hill on that. And they had like 4,000 applications for a job. And I just happened to like throw an axe from Texas, considering changing. And because I had called every firm in 5 states that did this thing, and because I was probably the most knowledgeable person who had never sold the product in the country, right? And I had never sold that product. I had never sold competing products. I was literally just I'm trying to find a good thing that I would feel comfortable being involved with for 10 years, right? And the long and short is I threw this axe from like 13 miles away, and I stuck it, and I got this job kind of out of the blue with this team that was just a really high quality team. And so I went there and I worked for a decade, but I was there without a history in financial advice. So like the next day I'm like, well, here's how this one tool works. But to really do that honestly, I was working like 20-hour days, 22-hour days for a year. Because I had to learn a lot. And I realized really immediately, I was like, hey, honey, if we take this job, you're not going to see me for a while. Right. Because I don't know financial products well. And holy hell. And so I just went to work all day, every day, 6 days a week, for years. And in that experience, it was such a blessing, if in all candor, because you get to just sit down with this 65-year-old and they're like, well, what do you have going on? Well, I've got this REIT I've been in for 15 years. I've got this syndication. I've got this tenant in common, right? I've got all these stocks. I've got these bonds, these annuities. And it was just a decade of really having people tell me what they thought of their products that they had been in for decades. Like, well, what do you like? Like, well, first conversation about a real estate investment trust. I'm like, tell me more about that. Like, I don't know anything about REITs. And
Right.
so they just talk to me like, hey, here's how the REIT worked. And here's what we got into. And here's why it kind of sucks. 08, they surrendered all their redemption options. And you're like, oh, that doesn't sound good. And then you talk to 10 more people about REITs. And you're like, okay, I see the problem with that tool. These people all have the same gripe, right? Like, it's a big, complicated asset that you don't control your financing, you don't control your entrance and exit, you control your entrance, but not your exit timetable. It can get real hairy real quick. It's a Reg A, B, C, or D. Like it's a not, if you're not an accredited investor, you can't get into it at all. And so it was just this 10-year crash course on every financial tool there is on the planet. And in that 10 years, I was always looking for a real estate solution because our firm didn't have one. We didn't specialize in real estate, but I just kept seeing real estate come across my table. Like I kept seeing like the same balance sheet out of Northern California. You're worth $4 million, right? Your primary residence, $1.5 million. And as I'm chatting with these people, it's just like, hey, we're living on rice and beans. Like we're worried about getting our, long-term care. They're just worried about money. I'm like, how do you have $5 million and you're this worried about money? Like that doesn't compute in my head, right? And it was because the real estate in that market, as far as cash flow goes, was just hot trash. Like any operator in the world would agree with the 1% rule. I think that is like the gold standard of real estate investing. If it's worth 200 grand, it should rent for 2 grand a month. If it's worth 2 million, it should rent for 20 grand a month. If you do that, it's hard to mess it up. Like it's hard to mess up real estate if you can just start from the right port, right? And over and over, I'm like, okay, so you got this $2 million property. How much is the rent? I'm expecting, $20,000, maybe 10, right? Like maybe 10. And they're like, oh, it's at $3,500 a month. I'm like,
that's brutal.
If you can't mess it up at 1%, like 1% of the value is your rent. If you can't mess it up at that, there's no way to make $3,500 off a $2 million investment work. There's no way. It's impossible. And so what I realized the people needed was a 1031 because they're all just holding on to this property waiting for death. Like every single one of them. I'm like, well, why don't you just sell it? Because we'd get tax murdered. Like, but if we just hold on to it and wait till death, we're going to get the step up in basis and our kids are millionaires. And so all these people had these trash cash flow assets, right? Where they were still changing toilets, where they were still having to deal with tenants, where they were still having to deal with evictions, and no cash flow to speak of, only because if they hold on to it until they die, it steps up in basis. And I was like, that is so broken. Like you bought this asset as a retirement asset and all it's doing is making your retirement worse. And so I started looking around for years. I asked the firm, I was like, hey, I want to find a real estate solution, like just a REIT or something that we can just refer business to, get a referral fee or, a commission or whatever the crap. Like we got to have a solution. And as I went into that question deeper and deeper and deeper, like, okay, syndications work like this. I sat down with the head of 7 different syndication companies, big multifamilies, right? Real REITs work like this. Okay, I sat down with 3 or 4 bosses of REITs, like really trying to say, hey, we got a serious company here. And we just want to refer some business. And so I was able to look at their books and their operations. And I was really able to see that, be introduced to key personnel. And like, at the end of all of that, I sat down with my team and said, I don't think there's a solution here. And it's because on a REIT, a syndication, a tenant in common, a DST, Delaware Statutory Trust, they are all just different flavors of the same thing. You are taking your money and you are giving it to them. and you are now in a commingled investment that is far too complicated for you to ever step in and fix if it goes wrong. And you are praying that they know what they're doing. And if they don't know what they're doing, it's going to go super wrong super fast. Like on a typical syndication, the play is always the same. We find a Class C or a Class B multifamily that we're going to buy and we're going to fix up. We're going to add washers and dryers when they don't have it. We're going to add dishwashers when they don't have it. We're going to spruce up the grounds. We're going to take it from a Class C to a Class B, right? We're going to take the rents up to market level. Maybe they're, it's aged and it's not market level anymore. Maybe they're $100 under market, right? We're going to get it to market. We're going to turn it into a Class B. We're going to jack the rents up $200, $300 over a 5-year turn. And then with cap rates, we're going to go through the roof. Like the valuations are going to go through the roof, right? And the way that every single one of those is structured is we're going to borrow 20% to buy it. And we're going to borrow another 20 or 30% to fix it up, right? If that operator doesn't know what they're doing, they're going to spend the 20% to buy it. That's going to be gone. And then if they run into like a black mold remediation on 300 units, like a stocky bottress.
Big problem. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And so what you end up with is, hey, it just took longer to rehab than we thought, or it was more expensive to rehab than we thought. Turns out we didn't really know what we were doing because we bought a course from this guy and we were like presenting that we had done this with all this experience because the guy had all this experience. And turns out like we're out of money and we've blown through our liquidity test, or we perform at everything at 3%, not realizing that like it's a 7-year note and has to be refinanced. And in that 7 years, interest rates went to 7. And it's like, well, now we don't have any money. We can't even refinance. We got to do a cash in refinance. We got to put money on the table to refinance this thing. And it's like you're on the phone with all your investors doing a dreaded capital call. Hey, you've got to put in more money or we're going to lose this thing in foreclosure, right? Like the 20% is going to be gone. The extra money is going to be gone. They're going to take the whole thing. And so that's why it's a Reg A, B, C, or D product where you're not allowed to invest unless you're a accredited investor, because they're saying, hey, if this goes wrong, it's going to be gone, right? And all of these commingled investments are some flavor of that, right? They're all some flavor of that. Now, if you find a good operator who's got years of experience, you can make great money. The economies of scale are great, right? But you can't control your financing. You can't control your timetable. You can't step in if it starts going bad and take over. And I could do all of that with single family residential.
Yeah, so I was about to say that's kind of that led you to think, well, I know what we can control. It's more the single family.
Correct.
This is more doable for the everyday person.
Correct. And it can be marketed to a non-accredited investor. Like anyone can go buy one rental, right? It's a very everyman investment class. Like hundreds and thousands of people have made their millions figuring out how to do single family residential. And so all I said was, I think single family residential can be a really awesome asset class if you address the problems with single family residential, right?
So what are the problems? What do you see as the problems with single family residential?
So there's problems with single family residential, and then there's problems with the business model that helps people buy single family residential. Okay. So let's take those in two pieces.
Okay, makes sense.
There's a business model that exists. I was in this research for 2.5, 3 years. And so there's a business model that exists that helps people invest in single family residential. It's called turnkey. The big turnkey houses out there would be like Real Wealth Network or Rich Uncles or Done For You or Chris Crone. Like they're all, hey, we'll help you find, vet, and buy a piece of single-family residential vetted by pros, like who know what they're doing, and we will just charge a fee, and you'll be able to get into real estate with training wheels. Like there is a model that already does that.
Yeah, and just so the listeners understand, and it's not you're not buying a deeply discounted property that needs a ton of work. In the turnkey model, you're buying something that's ready to rent, essentially.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. And there are different levels of that. Like some houses, like Mid-South home buyers kind of out of Memphis, they do more of they buy everything at auction. They strip it all down to the studs. They've got a big waiting list because they just don't turn that much property. But when you buy it, it's like it's new, right? And so different turnkey companies have different levels of rehab that they do before it's done. But really, for any of these big houses that are turning over like hundreds of properties a year or thousands of properties a year, they're really buying at market when they spot a good deal, right? And they're buying at market, and then they'll go in and do a level of rehab that gives them a certain time frame. Like at Bedrock, we buy when we see a good deal. I can kind of walk you through what that is, but we're really looking for a hold time of 5 to 7 years, right? Because we know we can't get a rehab up front without getting heinous that'll kind of mitigate those risks long term, but we can get a rehab up front that mitigates 5 to 7 years worth of deferred maintenance, right? Like if the roof only has 3 years back on it, okay, we can do the roof up front, we can do the water heater up front if it's more than 10 years old. Like we can do some things up front so that we can mitigate how many ACs are really going to go out and how many water heaters, how many major mechanical have to be dealt with, right? And so
because I found that that's one of the things that real estate investors don't think about a lot. They don't think about these capital expenditures, the roofs,
for sure,
the ACs going out. They're just like, hey, I just want to get this house and get cash flow. And so a good turnkey provider is thinking about those things like you're talking about.
For sure. And the reason that I had a problem with turnkey was because, again, in my role in kind of financial advice adjacent, I had a client buy a house from rich uncles. Like it's probably the second biggest one of these turnkey providers. And they sold him a house that was $53,000 in Detroit. And he came to me and he's like, hey, I'm going to buy this rental property. I'm really excited to do this turnkey. I had already done a lot of research on the model. And he said it's $53,000 in Detroit, showed me the address. And I was like, have you already bought that? Like, is this done? Is this like done? Because I was going to wave him off because all the numbers were insane. And he's like, yeah, I already own it. And I'm like, how much do they think it'll rent for a month? And they're like $900, right? Like the 1% rule says a $53,000 house should rent for $530. If you could rent it for $900, you get like to get inducted straight into the Real Estate Hall of Fame. You get the trophy and the hat,
right.
like real estate.
You get the 2% rule.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa! But even you're sitting here, and as soon as I said Detroit 2016, your face was like, oh no,
rough.
Because you and I both know as operators, that's the wrong place and the wrong time, and that's too cheap. There's something to be said for things being too cheap. Right?
100%.
Like there's a reason you don't buy sushi for 10 cents a pound.
Right. That's right.
And so I got to experience that property with him because I was working on some of his other assets and I kept asking him, like, how's it going? He had to evict the property 4 times in 2 years. He had to keep flying out to Detroit to do it, to deal with. He had to get 2 different property managers, and then luckily, each eviction cost him like $4,600 to $6,000 an eviction off a $53,000 property. So like a 10% capital outlay 4 times in 2 years. Like this was a retirement asset, and it just turned into him like living in Detroit half the time. And then luckily, it burned to the ground. Who knows why, but it burned to the ground. They paid him $88,000. And I asked him, hey, are you going to buy another house or are you going to rebuild? And he's like, no.
No. I learned my lesson. I'm not going back to Detroit. I'm not getting in a plane. I'm not doing that. Yeah. It's unfortunately for most people in that situation, their house doesn't burn down. They don't get insurance money and it's just a slow bleed out, honestly. And then, until they end up selling it at a loss. And what somebody like that would usually do in that situation they'd be putting that property on the market, trying to get $55,000-$60,000 for it, and somebody would offer them $20,000 for it, or $25,000 for them, and say, this is really what it's worth on the market because
Correct.
It's in a horrible place, and it's just going to be impossible to manage.
That's exactly right. Like the only buyer for that market is either a gullible idiot who doesn't know better, right? Like I don't know how to say that nicer.
Right.
Like someone who doesn't know better.
Yep.
Or a seasoned, battle-hardened Detroit investor who knows I can put a tenant in it on like a rent to buy contract and have them take pride of ownership and have them put things into it and do like a contract for sale. Like there's a way to do that
That's
asset,
right.
but it's not like, hey, I'm a blind first time dewy-eyed real
long
estate
distance
investor.
Yeah, I don't live in
like,
California trying to make a ton of money in Detroit. It's like, to your point, it's either going to be the novice or it's going to be the pro who lives in Detroit, who has 30 or 40 or 50 other properties in that same area, who's like, yeah, I just add it to the mix.
And he's not going to come in and offer 53 grand.
No,
for this lease
oh
contract.
goodness, no.
He's going to come in and say, hey, 15 grand, take it or leave it.
And
like,
he knows you're in pain, and he's okay to wait on it.
Yep. So yeah, what I realized was a lot of these turnkey houses were passing off grenades, right? They were overselling the pro forma. They were understating things. They were overstating the rent raises, the appreciation. They were overstating the prospective rents. They were getting their $5,000, $6,000. And then when you were mad, they're like, dude, it's your property. This is real estate. I'm sorry, but like, this is real estate, and I'll go find another client. And they just had enough success because real estate is good to stay in business. And the clients who got these grenades, they just went and found more clients.
That's right. Yeah, because there's always people wanting to get in real estate, and so you're preaching to the choir, because we're the ones over here at Evernest. We would be called on to manage these properties, and unfortunately, what happens is you have the turnkey provider setting expectations up here, up
Correct.
towards the roof, and then the reality is down here. We're dealing in reality. Property managers dealing in reality for the most part.
Correct.
Expectations are way out of whack. And so it then turns into, well, it's the property manager's fault a lot of times. Well, it's your fault. Why didn't you rent it for this? This is what they said it could be. We're like, listen, we know the market better than anybody. You're more than a turnkey provider. We know the market. And what we've even found is that some turnkey providers, even if they place a resident and they're paying too much. They're paying above. They figured out how to get somebody in there above market rent.
Yep.
Maybe because they're not a really great resident, right? Because they couldn't get approved somewhere else, and so they put a bad resident in, and it's just a 12-month contract because they're not going to pay or whatever the case is. But yeah, so I hear you. So you saw this is the important part. You saw that, and you saw, hey, there's a need in the market for transparency, for quality, for like some education on behalf of these investors. Somebody needs to hold their hand through some of these. So this is great. Keep going.
Yeah. So we had, I hired, effectively, this is what I did. I hired away some staff from one of these big turnkey providers who I knew, because I had met with them, and one of them kind of went under right as I was deciding to arm up. And so a lot of their staff was kind of up for grabs, looking for jobs. And so I hired away some staff, and they had done like 4,000 houses already, right? In the turnkey model. And then you come to the second big problem. The second problem is the model has these weaknesses, which is turnkey providers can effectively sell people hot trash because it looks good on paper, and then by the time they realize it's hot trash, they're gone to the next guy, right? Or they sell 70% market good stuff because it's market good, and they just don't care that there's 20 to 30% hot trash, because if there's 20 to 30% hot trash, that's not enough to put you out of business. And you still have 70% of your people really, really happy. And you can pass the blame on to the property managers or pass the blame on to the investor themselves. You just didn't run it right? So I said, okay, number one, turnkey had these heinous issues of passing off garbage like grenades, right? And number two, the turnkey houses are setting really unrealistic expectations for management, for admin, right? They're like, oh, just hire a property manager. They'll take care of everything. Right? And like, if there was a less true statement that you could utter, like that should be a felony. That claim, just hire and you guys are property managers. So correct me if I'm wrong. But the bottom line is like, just hire a property manager. It'll be passive after that. Bull freaking shit. All right. That is not at all the case, right? Because even if you have a good property manager, let's put a pin in that for a second. Even if you have a great property manager, they're still not going to pay your mortgage. They're still not going to pay your property taxes. They're still not going to pay your HOA. They're still not going to deal with damage and remediation when it comes to homeowners insurance claims, for the most part. Most property managers can't manage an eviction to save their dang lives in a timely manner.
Most property managers aren't from a school of thought that was heavy in like business operations and procedures. And so when they get outside of their normal, just collecting the rent and sending the guy to go fix the thing, as soon as they're out of their box, they don't have the staff and infrastructure to take care of those edge cases. And it all goes to hell on the edge cases. And so really, we tell our clients, and I'm sorry for phrasing it this way, but we say property managers are great.
Thank you.
As long as they're watched like a rat in a cage. Because we have seen property managers claim to put in a $3,500 sprinkler system and invoice and pay that was never installed. We have seen a property manager have a tenant leave a property in October, and even after multiple calls, not get an answer back until February from the property manager. The reason the rent stopped being deposited is because it was vacant. We have seen a property manager have a tenant move out and not turn off the water, which busted a pipe in the center of the main bearing wall of the whole house, causing $55,000 worth of water damage and remediation, which went to State Farm, which got applied to kick to 5 different adjusters in State Farm, and the property managers are like, oh yeah, we're in communication with State Farm. Turns out once a week they send an email, and it takes 6 months, and by the time we step in, we're like, what are you doing? Like, why is this not done? This isn't even that complicated. My team steps in, we have answers that day, we have checks in the mail within 48 hours. Like, you got to run it like a business, right? And what we realized the second problem with turnkey was they were setting these horrifically unrealistic expectations on how much work it takes to really earn money and operate single family residential.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Like, this is a huge problem. The problem that I see from a property manager standpoint is people do think that this is just like mailbox money, passive income, and there's no such thing. You are literally buying a business. And if you don't treat it like a business, like just as, so before I got into real estate, I bought a couple of Moe's Southwest Grills. And they're like it's a fast casual restaurant birthed out of Atlanta. There's hundreds of them around the Southeast. So I bought a couple with some friends of mine, and we thought, hey, this is going to be great. We're going to hire some people. They're going to run these restaurants. We're living in the city. They're right in Birmingham. We're just going to let them run these restaurants. I cannot tell you how many problems we had with these Moe's Southwest Grills because we were considered just the investor. We were the owners, and like our own employees had to be watched like a hawk. We ended up firing 90% of them and had to rehire everybody. And then ultimately, what did it lead us to do? We were like, we've got to sell these things because we're not owner operators. And unless you're the owner operator, you're not gonna make it in the restaurant business. And so we did that, but real estate investors kind of get in the same deal because they think, oh, I'm just going to hire a property manager and I don't have to think about it. It's just going to, every single month, they're going to just deposit my check. And it's just not true because you've got decisions to make. Like you're talking about, even normal decisions. Hey, guess what, Mr. or Mrs. Real Estate Investor? It's July and your heating and air went out. And we've been out there to fix it 3 times. It's dead. Like you're going to have to, will you approve this $6,500 HVAC unit? It's those types of decisions. And if you're not preparing for those things and prepared for them, then it becomes a really rude awakening. And that's where the relationship goes south with the property manager. I'm definitely not saying that property managers are blameless. We're not. We do love to work within our processes. And so you're talking about the things that are on the fringes. Anything that gets out of process, especially if you have a property manager, most of them are managing around 200 to 300 doors, right, per market. Some of them are a little bit bigger. They rarely get over 500 doors, but if you get out of that process, it creates a problem because it's not something that's easily solvable, and it requires a lot of travel back into a lot of communication with the resident. There's all kinds of things that go on. So I do agree with you. Real estate investors should go into it with eyes wide open, understanding this is a business and it is not a set it and forget it type of thing. You can go buy stocks, go buy a mutual fund if you want to do that, in my opinion.
Exactly. Like if you want it to be 100% passive and you never have to do anything and you want to just put your money there and then go and live on a beach in Ibiza, you desperately need to just buy an ETF.
Yeah, that's
there's other ways to invest.
Right.
You do not have to be a real estate investor.
Correct.
real estate has its own amazing benefits though. Like I love real estate, especially in an inflationary economy. And that's something people just don't talk about nearly enough. Like I'm LDS. I served 2 years as an LDS missionary in Venezuela from 2001 to 2003. And I got this like crash course on inflation while I was there. Like I got there, the bolivar was selling for like 800 bolivars a dollar. And so when you show up in Venezuela as a 19-year-old kid, you got to find stuff you can eat and everything feels like the moon. And so I ate a bunch of what's called pan francés, which is like little French bread, like the little French baguettes that they sell all over Venezuela and all over Mexico. And so I would buy that for 1,000 bolivar note, which to me is like a 19-year-old American. I was like, $1,000 bill. And they're like, that's not a dollar bill at all. Like whatever. That's like $1. And so like the 1,000 denomination took me for a while. And then, okay, so I just spent 1,000 bolivar note all the time. I was only there for 18 months because my visa got delayed. And so I was there for 18 months. By the time I left Venezuela, the bolivar was trading like 3,500, almost 4,000 bolivars to the dollar.
Wow.
It had dropped in value by 75% in the time I was there, which means the same $1,000 bill I was spending, 1,000 bolivar bill I was spending when I got there for a pan francés was a 5,000 bolivar note by the time I left. 5,000. But more than that, like if you had $100,000 a year worth of bolivars and fixed income pension from PDVSA, Petroleum de Venezuela, right? Like if you had $100,000 in net spendable bolivars coming to you, by the time I left, it was only spending worth 25 grand.
Yeah, not good.
And since I've left Venezuela, inflation hit like hyperinflation numbers like 6 different times. They completely surrendered the bolivar. They issued the bolivar fuerte. They chopped 3 zeros off the bolivar fuerte at a different period of time. It got so bad they couldn't even import their bills from Denmark. They didn't even have enough money as a country to pay for the new bills because the hyperinflation was so rampant. Now, the person in that situation who's fine has rental real estate and it's just changing the price of their rent.
Yeah.
As someone who's worried about inflation, you do not care about inflation if you've got 30 rental properties. If you've got 30 rental properties, sure, inflate to the moon. My properties will go from $300,000 a piece to $3 million a piece, and I will maintain my value because they are assets and they inflate. And at the same time, as rent goes, as inflation goes through the roof, rent's going to adjust, right? It's going to go from $100 a month to $2,000 a month. But here's the magic. If it's a 30-year fixed mortgage you got on that thing, your debt maintenance stays $75 a month.
That's right, the same.
So your debt maintenance stays the same while your net spendable income's going with inflation. Your asset value is going through the roof while your mortgage balance, your debt balance is staying the same and actually going down over time. Right. And so I think that like part of the reason I've always loved real estate is because I think that the U.S. fundamentally our asset classes to address inflation are laughable. They are laughable. Anyone in the market who's like, OK, I'll ask this question just because we have never had this conversation. What do you invest in if you're worried about inflation as an American?
Real estate.
Okay, not you. You know how to invest in real estate. What do you invest in if you're worried about investing and you're not Spencer Sutton? Assuming you're not a real estate operator, what do you do if you're worried about inflation?
I don't know. What do you do?
People buy gold.
Yeah, that's right. They do
right?
buy precious
That's
metals.
become kind of standard U.S. standard retirement advice. They're like, just buy gold.
That's right. That's true.
Because you can make like a commission by selling gold, right? And because none of the other asset classes in modern portfolio theory adjust well for inflation at all. In fact, as people get older in the U.S., they have 100% of their portfolio, right? When they're young, it's like 70% stocks, 30% bonds, right? As they get older, modern portfolio theory says move more and more of that into bonds, right? So then they're like 70% bonds, 30% stocks. And you know what asset class does the absolute freaking worst in an inflationary environment?
Bonds do.
They get murdered.
They get hammered.
Like murdered. Like you put your assets here because they were safe, not from inflation. All right, they were never safe from inflation. You just didn't realize that inflation was a specter that could exist. And so, in my opinion, yeah, real estate has to be part of the equation, right? And so, as I looked at financial advice for a decade, I just said, hey, you can do single family residential. And I think you could even set the pay structure up so you kind of handcuff yourself into saying, hey, if it doesn't do what we say it's going to do, we'll do all the administrative work that has to be done, right? So I launched a business management company. We'll set up the LLC. We'll keep the books. We'll deal with the property manager. We'll talk to your HOA. We'll deal with HOA compliance issues. We'll do homeowners insurance. We'll do all the administrative bull crap that's coming that no one else is even talking about. We're going to be honest and say all of this crap exists, right? We'll do all of that crap. And if it doesn't perform as advertised, I'll do it for free. Because I want you to be able to buy a house full confident that I have bought it, knowing that if I bought wrong, I'm not going to get paid. And that's the difference between Bedrock and everyone else.
That's what I was about to ask you, because we just talked about all the issues that not landlords, but real estate investors, for the most part, they deal with when they buy turnkey. And so this is your solve, right? So Bedrock says, hey, we're going to handle all of the crap that you don't want to handle. Correct. And if it's not performing the way that we said it would, you get all these services for free.
Correct.
That's putting your money where your mouth is.
Oh, our meat is fed right into the machine. We are as invested as you can be without a GP LP. So we're saying, hey, we will be as invested as we can, and we will be doing a lot of work, and we will get paid nothing unless it works right. But since we don't do a general partnership, limited partnership, which is the more typical approach, right? Partner with a pro, right? 50-50 split. We do all the work, 50-50 split, right? The problem with that is you really don't still control the asset. You give up a whole ton of control. And on single family residential, if it goes bad, a GPLP is like the last thing I want to be involved in. So what we do is we say, you buy the house, you control the house, you own the house, you finance the house however you want. We will provide this list of services for this fee, right? And we work for you, right? At the end of the day, if it doesn't perform as we advertise, as we thought it would, we'll do the work for free and we'll feel the pain right alongside you. And we've had just spectacularly happy clients. The big problem with Bedrock is it's hard to market this product. Like, we've been talking for 44 minutes. And I think now you have an idea of like,
sure,
that's kind of great. That's a great idea. Yeah. But until you understand the difference between like the business model weaknesses and syndications and DSTs and tenants in common and turnkey, and until you have an honest conversation around like all the work that goes into single family residential, like my product's built on all those fundamental pieces of honesty that no one else even talks about.
Correct. Yeah, they're not being discussed. Like those are not conversations that people are having. So tell me about the business from tell me the markets you're in. Tell me how have you been doing the past several years? I don't even know how long you've been in business. Several years, obviously. So tell me about what your business looks like today.
Yeah, so we launched the business management piece in 2017, right? But it was hiring a bunch of people who were coming directly from a turnkey house who had already had about 5,000 houses worth of advice or worth of experience. Yeah. One guy was like the COO of a big company that did it, that kind of broke apart into a bunch of pieces. One guy was like their main acquisitions officer, like the main client relationship. And so really I was able to pick up some great talent and a ton of institutional experience when it comes to finding, vetting, buying, and getting a product to people in a reliable way. And so we launched the business management side of things, but, and this is a big but, I just wasn't that interested in super fast growth. And I think you've seen this maybe at your venture. Like, the quickest way to get everyone mad is to get over your skis and start promising deliverables that you can't deliver. And so for about 6 years, we just onboarded 10 houses here, 12 houses here, 5-6 houses here, really working on making sure the product was good and worked. Right. And there were a lot of times when we had the opportunity to get much bigger, much quicker. And I said, we can't. The product will not support that. Like we've got problems in Polk County, Florida, as far as franchise and excise tax licensing that no one even knows exists. And, we've got random stealth homeowners insurance claims popping out of like the woodwork, like ghosts that we don't know why they're there. No one in the entire vetting process ever said there was an HOA. So how did this get missed? And like we were just whack-a-moling problems, right? And especially since we were working in 9 markets since we started, like each market's a little bit different.
That's right.
For example, Indianapolis has really, really hard winters, and we had way more water problems and intrusion than we would have ever thought was realistic. So we had to readjust kind of our CapEx reserve in Indianapolis, where we haven't had to in any of the other 9 markets, right? And so we've just been playing whack-a-mole for 7 years. A year and a half ago, we got to a point where I said, okay, I actually feel like the company can grow and that we have a product that I can offer, that we know how much we need to charge for the product, that we need to, like, we know how it's all going to work. And so we were building the product for now 7 years. For the first 5.5, it was just refining the product, making sure it was going to be good long term. So yeah, we've done a little over 150 houses now, kind of in that ballpark of the business management contract. But yeah, at this stage, we could onboard 10, 15 houses a month and nothing blow up. But there was a long time where we were onboarding everything we could, and it just felt like, there was smoke pouring out of all the machine was kind of, there was smoke coming from everywhere. And we were just trying to figure out, like, okay, our clients never smelled smoke, but we smelled smoke.
Right.
It's like,
right.
this is not, it's not easy. It's not passive. There's just a ton of things that can go wrong. And so we were just building systems for 5.5 years.
Yeah. And so, but that's a smart way to do it, right? It's to get your systems in place. That allows you to scale. That allows you to grow so you can onboard more and more clients. And Jeremy, this has been fantastic. I mean, I would love to have people reach out to you. What's the best way people can learn more about Bedrock and like reach out to you about more information?
There's a couple ways.
Okay.
Number one, our website, bedrockinvestmentproperty.com. You can go watch a bunch of videos where we talk about real estate. I've started between 17 to 30 companies, depending on how you count. And so at Jeremy A. Watson, like Aaron, at Jeremy A. Watson on YouTube. I put up YouTube videos all the time talking about just different financial concepts, kind of, hey, bonds are crap when it comes to inflation. Gold's kind of crap when it comes to inflation. Single family residential works. Let's walk you guys through the marginal and effective tax rates and the reason that's so important when it comes to just general financial advice. So if you just want to follow me on YouTube or go watch any of those, we own 23 cars and a rental fleet on Turo. Those videos have been blowing up. Like, we do breakdowns of kind of our cars and our insurance. And so you can just follow me there. Or if you just want to reach out and chat, the number's on the screen by my name. So the Bedrock main line is right there by my name. If you call that, they'll put you on my schedule or someone on my staff's schedule. But yeah, that's basically it. Feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer questions. But if you want to get to know me really well, just hop on YouTube. We've got 71 videos up. We've got thousands of watch hours of people just like this watching me talk through financial concepts. But yeah, this has been a blast. I really feel like you, Spencer, understand the problemscape better than anyone I've talked to. Mm-hmm. Like, every time I'm making a point about the difficulty of single family residential, I can just see it in your soul. You're like, oh, he's right. He's right. It is a beautiful asset class, but it is absolutely not a passive asset class.
Yeah, we like dealing in reality, and I think that what a lot of people get sold is not reality. And so that's why we're passionate about educating people. That's why we want to have people like you on the podcast so we can help educate and just say, hey, listen, go into it with eyes wide open. We still believe in the asset class, but be smart about what you're doing. Like, there's too much just junk out there, and it's a quick way to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're not careful.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Or the hilarious thing. Do we have one more? Do we have 2 more minutes?
2 more minutes.
So I asked this guy who bought the Detroit house, right? I was like, "Are you going to rebuild it?" And he's like, "No, absolutely not." And I was like, "Well, you're going to rebuy another house through a rich uncle." And he's like, no, oh, no, 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 absolutely not. I was like, okay, man, in my experience, the worst things I've gone through have actually taught me the most. And I think that's for most people. We call them redemptive experiences, right? Experiences that through life and through time are redeemed and are much more valuable than we thought originally, that taught us all the valuable lessons of life, right? I said, what did you learn? Like, what did you learn? And he said, when it comes down to it, I've realized I love the Detroit Pistons. I was like, what? Like, that's not a redemptive lesson. What are you talking about? You love the Pistons? And he's like, no, I realized, like, I played basketball in high school and I've just kind of gotten out of it over my life or whatever. It's one of those passions that I just kind of let go. But when I was flying out to Detroit to deal with this property over and over, I'd say 2 or 3 nights, I'd deal with my property manager. I'd go clean, de-junk the house again. He's like, but at night, I was there alone. My wife was still in California. He says, so what I would do is I'd go catch a Pistons game, right? And he's like, and I realized I love NBA basketball. He's like, I realized I'm a Pistons fan. And so that's what we tell everyone who comes to Bedrock. My goal with Bedrock is that you can enjoy a beautiful asset class, but that you not become a Pistons fan.
We don't want you.
No, that is the whole goal. Do not become a Pistons fan in retirement because you're working on this house in a state you don't live in. Like,
stay in California. Be a Golden State fan.
Yeah, feel free, but like,
that's right.
Do not become a Pistons fan in your retirement because you have a grenade in your portfolio that just cannot be dealt with.
Yeah. Good stuff, Jeremy. Wise, a lot of lessons learned. We like to look at it. There's Ray Dalio has a principle: pain plus reflection equals progress. And that's it. It's like when you have pain, if you reflect, you can make progress. It's the redemptive moments you're talking about. So, well, Jeremy, thanks for your time, man. This has been great, been fantastic. And everybody, we will be back next week with another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast.
Now that you've watched that, if you want to watch any of our other interview-style content, I would actually go and watch our 1031 exchange video with IPX 1031 Exchange. Now, that was one of 3 or 4 videos we did with 1031 exchange custodians. IPX 1031 Exchange did a really good job of helping people understand how they work, why they work, when to use them, when not to use them. I use 1031 exchanges all day with Bedrock. We just helped a client do a $4 million 1031 exchange just the other day that closed. If you want to watch that video, I'll put it right here. Thank you so much for following. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of me building 6 to 7 companies, depending on how you count. Have a good day. Bye-bye.